All right. Again, thank you all for joining us this evening. This is the ANC3C Planning, Zoning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee meeting for November of 2023. So no decisions are made at this meeting. This is just to have a little bit more time to discuss in a little bit more detail some of items we've brought up for the area and the community. We have really two main items on the agenda. One item has a subset of three items, three bills regarding housing in this particular Rock Creek West area in Chevy Chase. With that, and the other one is the Washington International Schools. It's a BZA application, correct, Swale?
Notification of consequence to the BZA application. So, yeah.
Okay, so if the Washington International School is ready and willing and able to, we're going to let them go first with a presentation and then open up to Q&A if anybody from WIS wants to raise their hand, and if you want to share something, I can make you a co-host and make you have the ability to do that.
I believe Ms. Carolyn Brown and Mr. Dale Temple are here. So Commissioner Pagets, if you can make them both co-hosts, that'd be great. And are you all okay going first? That way you get to not have to sit through the whole meeting.
Yes, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate it. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Okay.
Great.
I have some slides that I can share with you when you're ready.
Yeah, so we are ready. You may go ahead and start testing the share. One thing I encourage you all to do is, since this is already an approved BZA application, it's been through the ANC, you don't need to go through the history of the project. Let's just look at the one specific thing that you're requesting. And then if commissioners do have additional questions, they can ask for additional slides, but I would encourage you just to focus maybe, 3 to 5 minutes of comments, like I said, and then and just to focus on the changes so we can be very hyper focused on what's the new aspect.
Great. Thank you so much. So I will begin then. Good evening. I'm Carolyn Brown with the Brown Law Firm here with Dale Temple from the Washington International School. Let me see if I can make sure. Yeah, there we go. We're here today with two elements that we want to change on the BZA approved plans in BZA case 20458. One is the extension of the below grade foundation wall, which will allow us to relocate the electrical room from the below grade lower level 2 to the lower level 1, which is also below grade. And also accommodate some back of house space. The second element that we're requesting to change is the at-grade skylight at the south terrace. The skylight was embedded into the terrace walkway that you could walk over it. Now it's going to be reduced in area slightly, and then it will be a raised element of approximately 3 feet 4 inches in height. Typically, these things can be approved at the zoning administrator level. In this instance, we've had a change in personnel, and instead of the more, they've taken a more conservative view that this needs to go back to the BZA as a modification of consequence, which is not a full hearing item. It is put on the agenda of the BZA meeting, and presently we're tentatively scheduled for December 6th. And they ask for comments from the ANC, and if no one has any major issues with it, then they are allowed to approve the modification of consequence at the hearing. So let me first go over the site plan of the WIS property. The project area that was approved back in by order in 2022 in the summer, that is the area that's dotted in red, and everything that we are doing is below grade, with the exception of the skylight, in the area that's in blue. So it's all within the project area that was reviewed by the BZA previously. What you see here in this slide is the area of the first lower level area where the blue line shows the expanded footprint of the lower level. And on the east side, it expands by about 13.5 feet. On the north, it is approximately 4 feet. And then on the northwest corner over here, it's approximately 8 feet wide. And you'll see on this level, we have the kitchen, the dining hall, and some science labs. In this area, the reason that we had to expand it was to relocate the electrical room from the lower level to the first level on the same side with the kitchen, because the electrical code does not allow electrical equipment below plumbing facilities that we would find in the kitchen and in the restrooms. So that's what's happening here on this level up, and I'll get to this corner in just a moment. On the level below grade, the next level down, we're matching the outline here. And the reason for that is for structural and waterproofing reasons, that if we were to not match the footprint of the first lower level, we would end up having to do very complex cantilevered structural requirements, and there would be expansion joints to help with the vibrations and differentiation of loads. So that's why they're going to match the same footprint on the lowest level. There is absolutely no increase in the, well, there will not be any increase in classrooms or student activity space. This will all be related to back of house mechanical equipment. Now I'm going to talk about the skylight, and you'll see here the area of the original skylight, and that is now going to change, and it's got to get clipped a little bit and get smaller, as you'll see in this slide. It was out here, it's narrower, and then it's also been raised, and here it is in profile, approximately 3 feet 4 inches, and here it is in the upper right as an illustration of it just being a wall. Now that you can walk around as you go through the south terrace. So that's the extent of the changes. We've worked with the Tregerin Conservancy and have updated them. They have not voiced any concerns about this new configuration. It's all below grade. Nothing will change the appearance of the campus or the historic profile of the landscaped areas. So we're hopeful that you will be able to endorse this at the full ANC meeting, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brown, especially for being succinct and sticking to the relevant parts. Yeah, I'm gonna open it up to see if any committee members have any questions. My only question was about if the Conservancy is okay with it. To me, like, just to reiterate, there's barely any above ground change. Most of this work is happening underground, and it's more for the functioning of the structure. So, Commissioner Nash has his hand up. Go ahead, Commissioner Nash.
Sure. Thanks very much. I just had a couple of questions. First, to confirm that there is no sort of change to the south profile, right, as is viewed from Tregerin Conservancy or the pond. That stays the same. Is that correct?
That's correct. The only above grade feature that will change is the raised skylight, which you won't be able to see because of the intervening landscaping on that level and the terrace, and then the skylight.
Okay, thanks. And then secondly, because the east subterranean wall moves closer to the mansion, are there any additional precautions or safeguards that your engineers are recommending just because construction has moved closer to that structure?
No, actually, they recommended that we move it in that direction because there's the electrical generator or transformer that is underground in the area of the mansion to the northwest. And that's one of the reasons that we have to keep all the electrical connections through to that east side of the new construction between the mansion and the new building.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Mr. Goodman, you had your hand up. I don't know if you had a question.
I had a question and and comment. I thought to be a no-brainer. Carolyn, thank you. I'm sorry that the new zoning administrator is being difficult, and that's a thing we'll have to watch out for in the future in dealing with the the new regime.
Agreed. Thank you.
Any other committee members with questions or comments? I don't see any hands. Any members of the public, any questions or comments? You feel free to raise your hand. You can also send a chat to me if you would like, or one of the other commissioners, so we'll make sure that we see you. Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Ms. Brown, and thank you, Mr. Temple. What the next step that'll happen is I will be drafting a resolution. I'm going to work with you all to see what that looks like, and eventually I will be working with my fellow commissioners to see that what people are approved with. And so I'll be in touch, and then we'll, like you mentioned, we'll have a full vote at our ANC meeting. So watch out for my email for a draft for the resolution, and then we can take it from there.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Commissioner Paggets.
Great, thank you. All right, so for the next item on the agenda, along with the subsets of the bills, Councilmember Fruman, obviously most of you, all of you should hopefully know, Ward 3 council member, has introduced 3 bills to the council. They will go before the committee of the whole for a public hearing scheduled for, when is this scheduled for? The hearing will be held on noon Friday, December 8th. And then anyone wishing to participate, so sorry, I have to go. My building is having a fire right now, possibly. I'm going to, and I see Kevin Kelso might be joining me outside shortly, but I'm going to make Swale the host for this, and hopefully you guys can carry on the discussion. But this is just hopefully to introduce what the bills are about and get some talking and feedback about what we want as ANC3C to say about these, considering that a lot of this is
Save yourself.
affecting our
No,
community.
we got it.
Leave.
Thanks, guys. So sorry.
So I guess this legislation is definitely causing a fire, right? It's a really, really hot. Sorry, I was trying my best to make pun jokes.
Yeah, you were going there.
That was really great, though. I really appreciated that.
You know, I guess I haven't leaned into my full commissioner role yet. But I am gonna put the link in the chat where people can look at these legislations. Here, let me actually find the chat. Here we go. So I'm going to put a link in the chat. This is the same agenda that's on our website, so that everyone can click on these legislations if they do want to. The 3 ones are addressing legacies of housing segregation and Chevy Chase Amendment Act of 2023, releasing restrictive covenants and deeds Act of 2023, and then addressing legacies of housing segregation in the Rock Creek West Amendment Act of 2023. Like Commissioner Paggets mentioned, these are going to be introduced and they're going to be voted on, and just wanted to give an opportunity for all of us to discuss aspects of this that are interesting to us, and come up with a plan if this is something, if any of these or all of these or some aspects of these is something that the ANC wants to respond to. So given I've mostly just taken over as administrative host, I'll pause for a second and see if there's any committee members that would perhaps like to raise their hand and kick off the discussion, or any committee members that want to ask questions. And I'll try my best to take notes and forward to Commissioner Paggets.
Could I just ask preliminarily, is anybody here from Councilmember Fruman's office to speak to the legislation?
I thought Lauren was here to talk about it briefly.
She's
I could be
here.
wrong.
No, she's here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I'm also making
All
you
right.
co-host.
Fantastic. No, please don't make me
I am here. Any questions that come up, I've been asked to just take back to the office, and I can get those answers for you and then shoot them around to the group of you. So I will be listening in for any concerns or feedback, and then can circle back to you all.
Mr. Goodman, go ahead.
I had a question. If the policies in these bills are good policy, which I think they are personally, why are they limited to Rock Creek West as opposed to any place else in the city? If there are covenants in deeds in other neighborhoods that that say no multifamily housing, why should they continue while the ones in Rock Creek West are killed off, which they ought to be?
I am happy to chime in on that. And I think the belief and understanding is that to achieve housing goals that are needed in Ward 3, that there's a need to focus on the covenants that impact and would restrict some of that, most directly impacting the area that the council member obviously has jurisdiction over. However, the goal would be that this type of legislation would be an impetus then to expand it to other areas of the city, but that possibly leading with the entire city might then prove a barrier to getting what is needed, which is the removal of these covenants in these specific areas, including Rock Creek West and Chevy Chase.
I guess I'd respond to that by saying, if the policy is good here, it's good there. And if Matt finds problems with your council members from other districts, other wards who say, well, that's fine for you, but don't do it to me, then it puts them in a bad position of trying to defend what is clearly bad policy. So
Sure.
I know that your council members don't want to bite off more than they can chew, especially when they are baby council members, but ought to ask to do the right thing first and then back down if you have to. Just my political advice, which is worth a dime, if that. So
sure. No, thank you. I'll make note of that and share that. And I imagine it's something that he has heard, and I certainly don't mean to imply that he has already faced that with other council members. Yeah.
Commissioner Kripke.
Yes. Good. I mean, very good point, John. I'm not sure why we would want to restrict it to Ward 3 or these communities, but I just want to express general support for the initiative. I do think these are historic wrongs that should be righted and do have a legacy even now. And so in expressing support, I want to also say that I think that we should go beyond this or be thinking about how to go beyond this and to do a more comprehensive assessment of what the problems and the injustice in our neighborhoods has been in terms of racial and other kinds of exclusions. And I think the kinds of covenants and so forth have been important materially and symbolically, but that there have been other exclusionary mechanisms that have operated in our communities, and that we should go to some effort to try to explore them and understand them. And eventually, I think we need to rectify them, or not just remove them, but then actually go beyond and compensate for the harm that has been done. So I just want to express that here, and that I'd like to think about this with my fellow commissioners and really with our community about how we can do that. As many of us know, that there's a project in line that would go somewhere towards this, to do some exploration and some engagement with the community around the exclusionary history of our communities that's right now being held up a little bit by the Office of ANC, but hopefully we can do it and use that as a launching pad to think about more creative and maybe more material things we can do to right these historic wrongs. So I just wanted to say that here and invite others to talk about it and think about it. And I'm not sure in what context, but I'll be wanting to actively think about that with others. All right, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Kripke. Mr. Ward.
Hi, thanks. So I would first echo John Goodman's comments. If this is worth doing, it's worth doing district-wide, and it is worth doing. So just +1 to that. I'd also like to echo Commissioner Kripke's comments that he just made. This whole idea of exclusion and anti-apartment bias does, as the council members' memorandum and legislation lays out, have a basis in racist thought and discrimination against economic status in addition to race. And what I guess I find confusing about this is that it's so obvious that these are bad for those reasons that he clearly spells out, but the zoning codes of the time were created for the very same reasons. In fact, the zoning codes were changed. He cites the 1938 zoning law, but right after the initial zoning law in 1920 was put in, there were efforts to limit apartment buildings in neighborhoods in Upper Northwest, and the zoning code was changed to restrict that. So you're all familiar of the lovely little apartment buildings we have on Rodman and Porter and Macomb Street. Those were, built before those changes were made, and they were made at the time because the people who lived here didn't want people who lived in apartments living in the area. And our whole zoning system, the Euclid versus Ambler Supreme Court decision, cites apartments as parasites. So all this is to say, I love what these pieces of legislation are doing, but we ought to be looking at the zoning code at some point. And I hope this is a first step, not a last step, to addressing this issue, because there are communities all over the country that are looking at the exclusionary nature of zoning and anti-apartment bias and remediating it. And I think that's something that should be done here. It's being done in Arlington. It's being done in Alexandria. It's been talked about and will likely be done in Montgomery County. We need to get with the program, and I hope the council member will take the next step on this. Thanks.
Mr. Ward. Commissioner Nash.
Thanks very much. I have a comment on one of the pieces of legislation, and then a question, and I guess comment for Lauren Lipsey. So the first is, generally I don't have an issue with the legislation, and I understand why 3 bills are kind of before us tonight. But I guess I question whether, if this discussion is going to lead to a resolution, whether our ANC should be weighing in on an issue in Chevy Chase. I mean, it's not as if we have special knowledge or competence or can hear the views of constituents who would have more familiarity with that issue, any more than I would think it's appropriate for Chevy Chase's ANC to weigh in on a issue of relevance to Woodley Park or another neighborhood within our ANC. So as we look at this, I'm not sure I'd want to take a position specifically on that bill. With respect to the others that have broader impact for Upper Northwest and Ward 3, my question for Lauren is, in the council member's memo, there's some numbers cited on the number of affordable units that have been created in Ward 3. Do those include the units that have resulted from City Ridge and will result from the nearly completed 4,000 Wisconsin?
I do not know that, but I can find that out and get some more clarity around what those numbers represent for you.
I think that's important, because if they do include those numbers, then I would sort of make the following point, which is, if the city is serious about affordable housing, it seems to me it's got to do at least 3 things. One is the city has to build more affordable housing itself. It clearly then can't rely on the market mechanism to produce sufficient inclusionary zoning, which is not altogether affordable housing, but it's only producing a small amount. And indeed, we know that's the case if, say, City Ridge is only including 8% IZ, when we know just up the road, crossing Western Avenue, the baseline comparable affordable housing requirement is nearly twice that in Montgomery County, or 15%. And so I would urge the council member to consider, as part of a citywide reassessment of affordable housing strategy, to include that, to up that minimal threshold that's currently 8 to 10%. And then finally, the letter doesn't speak to rent controlled housing in Ward 3. And I believe Ward 3 has the first or second highest total of rent controlled housing in the city. But that housing is under threat for a variety of reasons. Some market forces, some the unintended consequence of the voucher program, but it provides important, more affordable housing for workforce and for people on fixed incomes like elderly residents. And so by not acknowledging it, I think it reflects the fact that the city is not doing enough to protect the existing stock of affordable housing that we have. So all of those, I think, need to be part of a strategy to increase the supply of affordable housing. Thanks.
I'll just quickly comment just on some things. One, the last thing, Commissioner Nash, that you said, so Councilmember Fruitman already has legislation on rent control. And so I think that's proven to be, oops, my screen just went black for a second. So I think that's, and I just put a link to that in the chat so you can look at that one. So I think that's, I give credit to the council member's office for really taking that front and center before he did this one. I think the other, I guess, and I think in terms of the other things, I think I personally think it's perfectly fine if we do tackle something that's happening in Chevy Chase, because again, like others said, a lot of the stuff in here applies to regions beyond what are specified in there. And so if we wanted to do something like, this is for this specific thing, but we encourage council to consider a more citywide thing, I think that's the type of stuff we can include, especially if we feel the same issues apply to our neighborhood. Mr. Goodman, go ahead.
Just a quick follow on to Rick's comments. There are I don't know whether the council members, the numbers of affordable units in Rock Creek West includes the 72 that will be part of the redevelopment of the Wardman Park complex. But if they aren't, they ought to be, because they will be available for renting in a year and a half or so. So that's just another number to toss into the pot.
Other commissioners?
I think it's just me left, and I think on mine I'm just kind of reading them and learning about them, and generally supportive of them.
Thank you, Commissioner Gordon. Ms. Gibbons, go ahead.
Hi there. Yeah, I mean, I thought some of the same things that Rick mentioned. I mean, does the area around Chevy Chase appreciate hearing from us about what we think? I mean, I don't feel strongly about that, but it certainly did come to mind. On the third piece of legislation, which is kind of a bit more sweeping, there's a lot about it that's somewhat vague. I mean, it references sort of modern zoning. If it would be okay under kind of modern zoning standards or something. I'm not quite sure what exactly that all means. I think that it does get mixed up with the affordable housing goals in a way that isn't exactly logical. I mean, getting rid of a bunch of archaic, covenants and such, who isn't for that? I mean, of course, get the first two, yeah, knock them out. The third one, I guess what came to my mind is I wonder if there is something that is already planned or in mind for this, and if not, if it would be, simply useful to know what would be a few examples of it doesn't have to be a few, one or two examples of places where these covenants would actually cause a problem with building multifamily housing. And so that kind of came to my mind. And Lauren, you're on the line. I don't know if there are examples that anyone has here. I think that we're all for building affordable housing. I don't know if there's any way to get out of this hole we're in without building, and without the city facilitating that building in some way or another. But it would be interesting to know, as we move in and everybody wraps their arms around the third bill, to have any idea of what's it really mean, what's the real fallout from it. Is it something real, or is it not? And if it's something real, is it something that could are there unintended consequences? that old saw. The other thing is, to the extent that it gets, in there with the affordable housing goals, I would point out that the Office of Planning has already told us in a couple of public settings that the intention is to satisfy the mayor's 1,900 plus, goal for Ward 3 through the utilization of existing units. We have been told that. And the meaning of that translation is, we will use currently rent stabilized units or buildings, with rent stabilized units in them. And the only way that those units will count to affordable housing is for them to be pledged for some period of time under, use of DOPA or something like that. So I think that, we've got a couple of different, issues, in here. We want to facilitate affordable housing. I just want to know, what's, what are some examples here?
Thank you, Ms. Givens. Yeah, I especially appreciate that last point you said about how they're intending to make up their affordable housing goals. And that's what worries me, is if they don't end up building enough, that they will just start taking away rent control. And that would be incredibly unfortunate if they do that.
If you don't mind, just to follow on to that, I mean, when we had, I believe the guy's name was Christopher Lucas. Was that the name of the guy from the Office of the Tenant Advocate who spoke to us last month? One of the things that he said, and I followed up with Joel Cohn at OTA, who said, please send me something in writing and I'll try to get back to you. But he said something in passing that I asked about on the mayor, getting into a mode of actually exercising DOPA rights. And he said that without, embellishing it. And then when I asked the question, he didn't have anything more to say about it. But I think that is something that could be of great significance to our, particular environment, because we have a number of buildings that are currently being used for permanent supportive youth housing. And so anyway, it seems as though we're kind of moving from one thing to another, but unfortunately the memo, kind of brings in those various issues as well.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone else? I'll just quickly add some comments. I mean, I think all these three are good pieces of legislation. I think we should definitely put any of the caveats in there if we do want to comment on them. I'll also say, if you look at how many people are on the co-introduced list, like, I don't anticipate these not passing. So it's one of those. So if we do want to comment on them, I think we can. But it seems these are pretty well supported within council. Any members of the public that would like to comment on these or bring anything to the discussion? Okay. Cool. Well, I took over administrative duties, but Commissioner Gordon, I'm going to pass this off to you now because I have no idea. Oh, wait, Ms. Gibbons has a comment.
Hi. I think that was the last thing on the agenda. So if
Okay.
does anyone have any other things they want to surface today? I think we're
I had one quick
close.
question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just, since Lauren is on the phone, any further update on, 'cause another bill that's, Matt's bill that's very much supported is the one on, rent stabilization and, comparable, pricing for apartments?
Yeah, that's the one I put in the
Um,
chat.
Yeah, that's a good question. We just discussed that today. Let me get an update on what the time frame is for that. And I can shoot it around to the group.
Great.
Sounds good. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
Wait, Commissioner Prinzo now has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
I just wanted to also, I don't think it really affects anybody here, but it affects every single building in my SMDs except for the 2 condo buildings. But if you haven't seen, OAG did file a lawsuit against 14 of the district's largest landlord corporations and a software technology system. And like I said, it affects many buildings within our ANC, and it affects every single building in mine, including mine.
Yeah.
So we have reached to OAG to see if somebody will be willing to come in, talk about it at our full meeting, and just give us a rundown on how it will affect our constituents moving forward.
Great. Commissioner Siddiqui, I saw a hand go up, but it went away.
I was clapping.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anything else? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.